No body, no dispute. From tonight, Ash Creek Ridge belongs to Mrs. Vane. That wasn't a threat. It was a death sentence, sold off like a piece of junk in the desolate mountains of northern New Mexico in 1881. Rose understood that what her stepmother wanted was more than just the death of her stepson. She wanted her father's entire estate, the summer water source, and the secrets buried deep underground, forever buried. The Jicarilla Apache didn't come here to buy a white female prisoner. Looking at the bag of silver and the hurried movements of the hired hand, Niko realized the deadly trap laid in the shadows. If this girl perished in these mountains, his entire community would become scapegoats for a crime orchestrated by the white people themselves. The one considered savage and the one stripped of all power were suddenly forced to stand on the same precipice. He made no promise of being a savior. That blade only cut the thread, not the wary suspicion between the two worlds. Either she would stand on her bleeding feet and walk into the darkness with them, or she would lie here waiting for the wolves to complete her stepmother's contract. The wind howled through Wolf Tooth Pass. The most brutal game of the West had begun, and the piece of paper hidden in her skirt was her only remaining weapon. "3 days ago, her world wasn't the harshness of the Sangre de Cristo cliffs, but the suffocating confines of a prison called family. Her father, Jonas Ward, died after a debilitating fever. What he left behind wasn't just the livestock, but control of Ash Creek Ridge, the summer water source that determined the life and death of an entire valley. Mara Vane, her stepmother, disguised as a pitiful widow before the town, had taken it all. She dismissed the old laborers, replacing them with Silas's hired thugs. Rose didn't cry. She understood that in the West, the tears of an unarmed young woman were worthless. Looking at the falsified dates, she realized the real plot. Mara was preparing to sell off the farm's water supply to a mining company. The piece of paper she hid in her skirt tonight was the last scribble she managed to write before hearing her stepmother's verdict. "If that brat ever sets foot in Red Willow, I'll lose everything." The place Niko took her to wasn't a peaceful village, nor a prison. It was a fortress of survival. To the Jicarillas here, a white girl carrying the scent of money and trouble wasn't a guest. She was a spark that could ignite the wrath of American cavalry or bounty hunters. Rose tried to explain using her limited Spanish, but her words succumbed to the scrutinizing gazes. In Atsa's eyes, Rose's hands were the hands accustomed to turning pages and playing the guitar, hands that had never known the cost of gathering dry wood in the snow or keeping a fire burning overnight. Niko didn't act like a fake hero rescuing a damsel in distress. He stated clearly in front of the entire camp. She stayed here because the truth about last night's trap was unclear, not because he believed her. Trust in the West isn't given with words. It must be bought with blood and sweat. Tears can't quench thirst, and weakness has no place in a farming camp. If Rose wanted to survive the day, she had to prove she wasn't a piece of junk, nor a burden. The battle to reclaim the name Rose Ward didn't begin in a trial, but with an empty water jug. The path from the small stream down the ravine to the camp wasn't long, but it was a brutal test of willpower. The weight of the earthenware jug felt like it was tearing her shoulders apart. The hands that once held pens and ledgers are now bleeding from friction with rough pottery. In the West, nature has no compassion. You can't cry and beg the cliffs to be less steep or ask the dry wind to stop draining your sweat. Don't fight the weight, Rose. Find its rhythm. Her father's words from their days counting livestock on the prairie suddenly echoed in her mind. She didn't give up. Survival doesn't come from overwhelming strength, but from adaptability. Niko observed everything, but he didn't step out to fetch water for her. The respect of a Jicarilla doesn't lie in making others weak to protect them. He let her complete her own path while he chose to retreat into the shadows, guarding the perimeter to ensure no predator was allowed near that water source. In the borderlands, trade is a battlefield without gunfire. Those who control the language and the goods control the rules of the game. Atsa knew the merchant was cheating, but the vocabulary barrier of the goods prevented her from exposing him to the community. The daughter, who had once stood counting hundreds of supply invoices for Ward Ridge Farm, never forgot how to assess supplies. Rose didn't act like an arrogant white savior. She simply placed the truth in Atsa's hands, giving the Jicarilla woman a sharp weapon to turn the tables. In that moment, Niko realized this woman's weapon wasn't made of steel. For the first time, he saw her not as a legal risk, but as a true ally. No salvation is accidental. In the flickering firelight, Rose recalled the parallel grooves carved into the stone slab beside the stream. The Jicarilla's crop counting system. They were identical to the mysterious symbols her father had hand-drawn on the edge of the Ash Creek Ridge map. The Ward family's secret was buried, but their legacy of kindness lived on. Just as the tattered piece of paper reconnected the two worlds, a horse staggered into the camp from the shadows of the canyon. The past had just offered a way out, but the present had tightened its noose. Scouts reported Silas Crow was roaming the nearby valleys, carrying a warrant from the town. They were staging a perfect play, searching for and rescuing a deranged white girl kidnapped by Native Americans. The enemy didn't come with guns, they came with the power of law. In this harsh border region, a single misstep could determine a life. The camp elder knew how to stop bleeding and reduce fever with herbs, but resetting a fractured bone required anatomical knowledge. Rose recalled the detailed drawings in her father's battlefield medical handbook. Standing by was the safest option, but silence now meant the child's death. There was no white savior here. It was a collective struggle for survival. As Rose tied the final knot, she realized her hands no longer trembled. This land had forged in her a steel that the peaceful life on the farm had never given her. Your mother once saved our water source. Atsa's deep voice echoed in the wind. And today, you saved a child's life. For the first time, Rose was no longer a risk. She had become a part of the tribe by her own worth. Love in the wilderness doesn't sprout from empty promises. It arises from the clash of two ideologies. Rose wanted to use white law to reclaim the farm and crush Mara's scheme. She believed the will would save them. But for Niko, that piece of paper from the white man was what had taken away his people's land. No one won that argument. But from that moment, they no longer looked at each other as two strangers forced to survive together. They looked at each other as two warriors trying to find a way to survive for their shared world. Niko didn't leave behind a vow to protect her at all costs. That knife was a silent message from the West. He didn't want her to be a weakling hiding in someone else's shadow. He wanted her to have a weapon to determine her own destiny. The worst thing isn't the enemy's gun, but when the enemy carries the name of justice. Mara Vane played a perfect move, creating a rescue order. Now, if Camp Jicarilla keeps Rose, they will become barbaric kidnappers. If Rose doesn't show up, the cavalry will raze this place to the ground. Her freedom was weighed against the lives of those who had sheltered her. She chose to leave, not out of weakness, but out of ultimate sacrifice. But Niko wouldn't let her go alone. The marshal expected a girl who was deranged, trembling, and disoriented with fear. But what he received was a voice speaking perfect, cold, and sharp English. Rose clearly declared her freedom. She wasn't kidnapped. She was here of her own free will. A stark truth piercing the deceitful facade of the guardianship order. Justice temporarily prevailed, but in the West, evil rarely retreats on paper. Turning his back and walking away, Silas uttered a curse carried on the wind. "If you don't shut your mouth, I'll burn down the place that taught you to speak." The darkness of the West couldn't hide the cowards. Silas hadn't come to fight. He had come to exterminate, burning down the camp, blaming the Apache for rebellion, killing two birds with one stone to legitimize Mara Vane's takeover of Ash Creek Ridge. In the West, when the law is bought, fire and blood are the only way for the strong to rewrite the annals of history. Time condensed into the pounding of heartbeats in her chest. Rose didn't run. She lunged up the cliff. The animal skinning knife Niko had given her that night now became the boundary between life and death. The price of staying was never cheap. The camp survived, but the winter food supply turned to ashes. One warrior fell. But from the ashes Silas left behind, scouts found a leather pouch. Inside was a map of Ash Creek Ridge, ore mine markers, and a letter signed by Mara Vane. A letter wasn't enough to bring down Mara's power. The judge could easily declare it a forgery. The original will, the original survey map, and the only surviving neutral witness were needed. Mateo Chen, the keeper of the documents at Red Willow. Atza returned the memento of his deceased mother to Rose. She said, "Take her down to where they said she belonged." Niko didn't turn the protection into a cage. He said, "Her voice goes first. Our guns only speak if they try to silence her." The journey back to Red Willow officially began. The town looked at her as if she were a ghost resurrected from the dead, a woman who emerged from the depths of the mountains, needing no man's protection, not collapsing or going mad as the lies had woven. Rose walked straight into Judge Bell's office. No tears, no pleas. "If you say I'm insane," Rose's voice was as sharp as shattered glass, "then let these papers speak for me." Judge Bell broke out in a cold sweat. He immediately sent someone to find Mateo Chen. But outside, Silas Crow had slipped away from the crowd, creeping into a dark alley. Silas intended to burn the copy of the will, but he forgot that he was being hunted by a Jicarilla. Niko didn't kill Silas, a corpse that can't speak. Rose needed the truth to be revealed in the sunlight, not an anonymous pool of blood in a dark alley. All the evidence locked Mara's scheme. The altered land boundaries, the forged guardianship order, and the plot to divert the Ash Creek water supply. There were no more screams or denials. Mara Vane glared at Rose with venomous eyes, hissing, "You don't understand what it feels like for a woman with no possessions to live off men's pity." Rose retorted, each word piercing the heart. "You feared being wiped out, so you sought to wipe me out." The legal battle was won. But evil always knows how to plant time bombs. Silas's final testimony poured cold water on the courtroom. Mara had signed a pre-sale agreement for the Ash Creek Ridge mining rights to a mining investment group from Santa Fe. If Rose hadn't acted immediately, the Jicarilla Mountain and water source would have remained forever crushed under the wheels of capitalism. Winning the lawsuit doesn't mean all wounds heal instantly. Ward Ridge is her father's legacy, but it's also where she was sold. If Rose clings to everything, she'll only become another version of Mara Vane, using paperwork to crush the lives that depend on this land. Her ultimate choice isn't revenge, but restoring order. She entrusted the cattle to genuine cattle ranchers. She established a fair trade agreement with Mateo Chen, ensuring that Niko's Jicarillas would never again be cheated when they descended the mountain. And most importantly, she preserved the Ash Creek water source intact, repaying the promise her father had made to this land. Niko didn't ask Rose to abandon her world to follow him into the wilderness. He told her, freedom isn't about running away from everything, but about having the right to choose what to keep and what to let go of. There were no sentimental declarations or vows. Wild West love was defined by survival. She gave him a piece of paper, a promise that she would forever uphold the truth. He gave her the knife, an affirmation that he would always keep the way back. Before nightfall, Rose wanted to return to where it all began, where they had thrown her away like a discarded object, where they intended to erase the name Rose Ward from history. Standing before the abyss, Rose's voice softly echoed, blending with the wind. They abandoned me here so I could disappear, Niko replied, his voice deep and warm, carrying the steadfastness of a mountain. Then, this is where you begin. Rose was not saved from her old life to vanish into a new one. She rose from the ashes, fought, and earned the right to choose both worlds. Thank you for accompanying Rose and Niko through the storms of Wolftooth Pass. Sometimes, the place where people want you to disappear is actually where you truly begin. What do you think of Rose's final choice? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy gritty survival stories and pure love in the Wild West, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue our next frontier adventures. See you soon.